RIMS is global. Discover why 10,000 of your peers in more than 60 countries are part of the world's largest risk management community. Visit rims.org/membership to find the best membership for you and your organization. Coming to you from RIMS headquarters in New York, this is RIMScast, the official podcast of the Risk and Insurance Management Society. I am Justin Smulison, Business Content Manager here at RIMS, and your proud RIMScast host. This is episode 380, and our guest is 2025 Goodell Award winner Randy Nornes. We will learn all about his fascinating career and his risk philosophies. But first, let's talk about virtual workshops, starting with the RIMS CRMP. On March 10th and 11th, we have a two-day course led by our friend John Button for the RIMS CRMP prep exam. And on March 17th and 18th, RIMS will align with a firm for a two-day RIMS CRMP Fed exam prep course. On to virtual workshops. On March 4th and 5th, we have a virtual workshop facilitating risk-based decision-making with our good friend Joe Milan. On April 15th, we have a virtual workshop covering emerging risks, and that will be led by our good friend Joseph Mayo. Register today and strengthen your risk knowledge. RIMS members always enjoy deep discounts on the virtual workshops. And we've got RIMS webinars coming up. On March 6th, RIMS presents High Stakes and Hard Hats, where we will dive deep into the careers of women leaders in construction risk. We'll be joined by a chief risk officer, an underwriter, and a broker who will explore their career paths, risk and safety philosophies, and lend some insight as to why this is the time for the next generation of leaders to rise up. For a quick preview, check out last week's episode with Cynthia Garcia. She is the Chief Risk Officer from Bernard's who will be joining us on that exciting panel. And on March 12th, our good friends from Global Risk Consultants return. Their session is Don't Waste the Soft Market, Where to Reinvest Insurance Savings Before the Window Closes. Register for these and other webinars by visiting rims.org/webinars and the links on this episode's show notes. We've got some more plugs coming up later. Let's get on with the show. As I said at the top, our guest today is the 2025 Harry and Dorothy Goodell Award winner. Named after the first president of RIMS and his wife, the Harry and Dorothy Goodell Award honors an individual who has furthered the goals of risk management and the society through outstanding service and lifetime achievement. Randy Nornes exemplifies all that and more. He has been with Aon for 38 plus years. Currently is the Executive Vice President and Enterprise Client Partner for Technology, Media, and the Communications Industry, and he has done some volunteer work that we're going to get into. He has a fascinating career. We're going to learn all about it, as well as his leadership style, his risk philosophy, and how he is keeping Aon at the forefront of AI innovation. And if you've ever been to RISKWORLD, you've definitely seen him roaming the halls and in the educational sessions. He has been an ever-present force there as well. And he is also a highly regarded member of the Chicago RIMS chapter. Let's get to it. 2025 Goodell Award winner Randy Nornes, welcome to RIMScast. You are the 2025 Harry and Dorothy Goodell Award winner. Congratulations, a long overdue event to have you here on RIMScast, but welcome.
Thanks. I'm great to be here and really proud of that award. It was when you get a Lifetime Achievement Award, then what happens next?
Right. You start to wonder if you have to make other plans.
Yeah, exactly. Is it like retirement? Should I write a book? What's next?
Well, I think we could write a book about you based on the profile that I read. But what was it like? We'll just congratulations again. We saw you on stage last year. What was it like being on stage and being honored with the Goodell Award?
So the high point was actually being backstage. With Martha Stewart.
Oh, okay.
So I had a chance to visit with her, and my wife and one of my sons was in the audience. So when Martha Stewart came out, because we'd had this conversation about risk management, Martha Stewart made a couple references to our conversation. So it gave me great credibility at home that Martha Stewart actually listened to what I had to say. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. That should be.
That was as good as the award.
That's the crowning achievement right there. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so for anybody who was not there, RISKWORLD 2025 was fantastic. It's one of the dozens that you've attended, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's probably 3 dozen.
Yeah.
And
And
counting. Yeah.
do they get better each time?
They get better, they get different. I mean, you could see decade by decade,
Yeah.
what's important changes. And it seems to be changing faster and faster almost year over year now.
Yeah. And so we're going to see you there in 2026. You're not going to be speaking. You won't win the award again, but you'll have a presence there. And that's really cool. I think some people after this episode might want to pick your brain on some ideas. And I just want to remind everyone before we dive too deep into Mr. Nornes's background, there is a wonderful profile written by our friend Russ Banham in the special awards edition of RIMS Risk Management magazine. It is still available online. And that's how I kind of got to know you ahead of this interview, because we didn't get a chance to meet last year. But we've got so much to discuss. Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day responsibilities right now.
I'm doing really interesting things now. So that's, I always try to link up with what the next big thing is.
Okay.
And so since late last year, I've been leading our AI infrastructure efforts. So sort of cross industry, but that whole thing from the financing of data centers to the construction, to the development, to the operation, and to the energy attached to that. So that whole thing is what you're hearing about, every day on, whether it's television or in print, about sort of this next big thing. And it's, 40% of GDP right now is coming through that lens of building AI infrastructure. And so that's, we've got a big team, and that's what I do every day. Almost,
at Aon.
At Aon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty massive undertaking, I would think.
It's massive. It's exciting. It's relentless. I mean, so it's because it's coming so fast and furious. It's not something you just sit back and have a lot of time to think about. We're actually just seeing this thing evolve like week on week. And it's global. So it's, you kind of check every box, and what's at the center of making it all work is risk management.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's a different lens depending on where you sit in that sort of AI infrastructure world. But everyone is thinking about, gee, what are the risks of, the construction, the operation, the access to power, climate? I mean, it's all melded into one thing. So.
Right. And how's the Chicagoland chapter treating you these days?
Chicago is good. I mean, it's a big, vibrant, RIMS chapter here.
Sure.
Chicago is, I think, unique as far as a big city, because we've got representation from so many different industries. So it's not highly concentrated.
Mhm.
So that makes, for good discussions, because we have a lot of different lenses people look at risks through. So
last year's Risk Manager of the Year was from Chicago, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer Pack. And then the the Rising Star was also originally from the Chicago chapter, Megan Smalter, right?
Yep.
You know them?
Yeah. No, it's all, this is a good spot. I mean, I spent some time in the West Coast, so Silicon Valley has a strong chapter. They all have a little different flavor.
Yeah.
But I think and New York I've spent time there as well. The Chicago one just is unique because it's, 25 different industries, not any one, probably more than 10% of the economy here. So.
And then also a quick shout out to our friend Julie Bean, who was the Heart of RIMS Award winner a couple of years ago. She's wonderful. Yeah.
So
great. A lot of you're in great company there. And it seems like the talent that comes out of Chicago brings something a little extra special to RIMS. So we appreciate all your engagement there, Randy. What I want to do is, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit. I don't want you to rehash everything from the profile, because that's available for everyone. But if you don't mind, can you just give us the abridged version of how you got started in risk management?
Sure. Actually, I think the article that was written talks a lot about my foundation, which was originally going to be a banker.
Yeah.
And what is a banker? A banker is basically managing risk around lending and projects, right? So it's not a huge leap to get to the world of risk management from there. But in the 1980s, most of the audience probably isn't that old. It was a very turbulent time for banking. We had just come out of a really tough inflationary period. There was, real estate bankruptcies, banks going under, savings and loans going under. And so my advisor told me, don't go into banking, because that's where I was headed. I had offers to go to banks to be part of the training program. He said, you're going to be miserable. There's going to be consolidation. You're going to be the youngest person and you're going to be expendable. So
Right.
He didn't recommend it. And just by chance, I happened to meet someone from Chubb and really hit it off just in the interview process and sort of that whole process through. And there was a new product called Directors and Officers Insurance that Chubb had sort of was scaling up on. And it was taking financial analysis. I love case studies in business school, and I was really good at case studies. And when you're underwriting D&O insurance, it's a case study. Is this good management? What's the business about? All of those things. So I thought I can do that job. And so that's where I ended up. I ended up starting at Chubb. And that's how I ended up where I'm at today.
And you moved over to Aon in what year?
I actually moved to a company called Frank B. Hall in 1987.
Right.
Yeah.
They were acquired by Aon, right?
And they were acquired in 92.
Yeah.
Right. And people say, well, how do you stay somewhere this long? And I think you're fortunate if you stay somewhere that's always on the acquirer side, right? So we were always acquiring and rolling up. And when I got acquired, Frank B. Hall, I was in my 20s still. So it was like I wasn't highly paid. I wasn't, I was a good worker bee. And so you stay on. But what a trip, working alongside, legends like Pat Ryan and really learning the business with this amazing front row seat. So
now Pat Ryan took a liking to you, as I understand it. He took you under his wing.
Pat was, I think, not just me. I mean, he was a great mentor, very hands-on. He still is. I mean, he's amazing. And so I think I credit him for access. I had an early supporter and a guy named Al Diamond, who ended up, Al was president of Aon for a while. Still keep in touch with him as well. Skip Dunn, another one of the founders. He's 84 now. But they're still going. I mean, they're still, active doing different things. So
when you've got such great leaders, how does that shape your approach to long-term risk?
I think part of what I found interesting, especially Pat Ryan, we were always looking for what's next. So you can have a transactional business, you can make that very efficient, you can be the best at those transactions, but looking ahead, saying, well, what's important? Either what's the next big risk to come along? How do we think about that? Or, is there a new framework? So if you think about like what happened in the 90s, you had sort of governance come to the forefront. You had Sarbanes-Oxley. You had enterprise risk frameworks come in because we had bankruptcies of MCI, WorldCom, Enron, and so these were shock events because they were companies that were appeared to be highly successful until they weren't, right?
Right.
And so enterprise risk became a thing, and then there were no frameworks. So how do you start to think about it? So that took me out of my sort of large client corporate world into building really one of the first enterprise risk focused teams to really help companies think through it. I mean, even before COSO and some of the frameworks came out, we were, and it's funny because I look back, a lot of the clients we dealt with in those early days were people who were in industries where someone had already gone through some trauma and they wanted to make sure they weren't next up. So it was a lot of, hurry up and make sure we're okay.
Right. And when you think back of all the technological advancements that have happened since you joined Aon, sort of from the birth of email, right, to where we are now, does that blow your mind?
It does. I mean, the one that I would say is most remarkable is, again, back in that 90s timeframe, we were doing risk modeling. So our reinsurance teams had these risk models. They all ran on sort of AS 400 mainframe computers. We had to book computing time to run a scenario. And so we would do, a scenario with a set of assumptions, and we would run sort of 10,000 simulations it would take, the better part of the day. And then if we wanted to make changes in those assumptions, we had to like rebook another time. So it wasn't something that you did. Now it's all on the laptop.
Yeah.
The quality of data is significantly higher. And we can do it in real time. And so that to me, for a risk manager today, they may not recognize how lucky they are, right? But I think that sits at the core of, sort of everything that I've always been about, which is, we're trying to decide what problem are we trying to solve for, and then what do we know about that particular issue, right? And so the modeling is the entry point to know what to do or what matters.
I imagine the analysts kind of look like Professor Frank from The Simpsons going, no, you have to fill out a form first in order to use the modeling. I imagine that.
It was it. And
in the lab coats and stuff.
Yeah, it was so rudimentary, but even in the rudimentary way that it was still directionally correct.
Right.
Right. So you could say, these things are, and I think, I think people have heard me say this before. I think risk is a terrible word. And I think we can have a hard time communicating with people who aren't in our space when we use the word risk, because risk, everyone has a different definition.
Right.
But I think certainty and uncertainty, and the distance between those things to be certain or uncertain for individual risks, everyone can get on board with that. Right. Yeah. And so what we're doing with modeling is really trying to understand what does that distance look like. And then you have to say, well, what's comfortable, or what, where's our tolerance at? And then what do we do with the part that we want to get rid of?
Right.
So I think that's at the core of what we do. And that hasn't changed in decades, but the tools we have now have changed dramatically.
Now that's very much in line with what Christy Kaufman said about you in the article. She said that you are far more than a traditional broker. You are a thought partner and a problem solver. And I was wondering what mindset allows you to consistently move beyond transactional work and into that strategic advisory mindset. Was there an aha moment for you?
I think, I had different mentors over the years, but one of the things that stuck with me was this thought that insurance is actually a complete waste of money.
Right.
And he would say that to me. I don't remember who was the person, but it was certainly sort of a provocative thing to say. Mm-hmm. But the punchline and the point was, it's a waste of money unless you can show how you're adding value, and you can get there by showing, this uncertainty spectrum, right? And just understanding that. So I think that when Christy said that, that's the mindset for anything, is like, okay, I parachuted in, what do we have going on? And if I did that today, I'd be looking at, supply chain issues and it's amazing when you have that lens. I remember back in the day, again, when this modeling was early, a supply chain issue we looked at, and someone said, oh no, we've got perfect end to end. We use Excel spreadsheets to manage our supply chain risk. And we started looking at, what that meant. But because they were not connected spreadsheets, someone would have to, everything was manually entered along the way. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered when we brought it all together was that because the managers were judged on sort of average inventory level, and obviously want to keep that at the lowest possible level, what the people would do to game the system was they would run inventory at like the most lowest possible level. And then they would raise it up at the end of the month so that, the thing looked like they were on target. So it wasn't like there was no real time. So this is sort of at the time ERP systems were coming in and people were getting more visibility. But there was what looked like risk management was fine, turned out to be, this is really scary. And it's, the chance of a stock out or a long time impact was pretty great.
We're going to take a quick break. I've got a special plug that you need to know about. RISKWORLD 2026 will be held May 3rd through the 6th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. RISKWORLD attracts more than 10,000 risk professionals from across the globe. It's time to connect, cultivate, and collaborate with them. Booth sales are open now. General registration and speaker registration is also open right now. Marketplace and hospitality badges will be available starting March 3rd. Links are on this episode's show notes, and be sure to check out RIMS.org for more information. And save the dates, March 18th and 19th, 2026, for the RIMS Legislative Summit, which will be held in Washington, D.C. Join us in Washington, D.C. for 2 days of congressional meetings, networking, and advocating on behalf of the risk management community. Visit rims.org/advocacy for more information and to register, and also check out the prior episode of RIMScast, episode 378, featuring RIMS General Counsel and Vice President of External Affairs Mark Prysock as we discuss the top priorities for RIMS in 2026 and beyond. And folks, the second annual RIMS Texas Regional Conference will be held in San Antonio August 10th through the 12th. The call for submissions for educational sessions is open through March 18th. Check out the link on this episode's show notes and make a pitch. Hopefully you get selected and we see you in San Antonio. And now let's return to our interview with 2025 Goodell Award winner Randy Nornes.
And we are back with Randy Nornes, 2025 Goodell Award winner. We've been talking about his career, and I was wondering, do you have a special communication method for when you have to deliver good or bad news to a high-level executive or someone of that stature?
I don't know if it's special. I was gifted by my father with a very calm demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helps. I've had to deliver like really tough messages before. And
your dad was a broadcaster.
My dad was a broadcaster.
Yeah. So you're familiar with, all right, and having to do the radio station announcer voice and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we're better looking on radio than television.
So we got the face for radio. That's that old gag. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I think again, if you have sort of a fact base, I mean, you're delivering what it is, but it's based on some fact. I mean, it doesn't always work that way in the industry because sometimes people do things that are not always fact based. But
right,
I think that's part of it. And and I've had a lot of crazy things I've had to deliver over the years. But
yeah, do you want to name one?
Well, early in my career, I worked with a financial institution client, and they had some major issues on the table. I think they had, litigation, serious financial. It was, one of those funds that turned out to be not as good as it should have been. And so I was standing outside the boardroom, ready to go in to tell them, whether they had insurance or not. And while I was standing outside the boardroom, they did not have any insurance. We couldn't find any. And I was on I guess it was probably even by pager at the time. Might have been by phone with London because we were trying to get something lined up. And had to go into the boardroom. I was prepared to tell them, as a 29-year-old, 30-year-old, that the board did not have coverage. It was a, well-known company. Yeah. And I got the message while I was in there that we managed to land something for them.
Oh.
And so I was able to pivot, and so my colleagues were like, we couldn't believe how calm you were going in.
All right. Look at the old beeper there. And
it had a happy ending. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for anyone out there listening who might be in a similar position, who might be in their, still early or formative years in risk when they have to deliver bad news or unpleasant news to a executive level individual or the C-suite? Is there a mindset they should take? Should they rehearse it? Should they get their cards out? Should they jot stuff down? What should they do?
Yeah, I think you want to make sure, better yet, you set yourself up so when that happens, if that happens, you've already set the landscape. So, I've seen like companies that have decided to take on a lot more risk. And then it turns out that that's when the hurricane hits. Yeah. And so you've got to go back in and say, well, it's going to cost us, $50 million. But on the front end, you went in and showed them what the alternatives were. You got them to buy into the strategy, and you were unlucky in that year. And you had the, hurricane hit. that hadn't hit for 100 years. But if you hadn't done that front end work and sort of got everybody on board and could see why that was the right strategy, then I think that message gets a lot harder to deliver. So I think there's a lot of front end work that has to go in. To drop bad news on people without any of that prep is going to be a lot harder. So, and that's why I think, being transparent about and bringing people along, especially finance people. So if you're reporting into a treasury team, treasury does the same work around, interest rate risk and foreign exchange and, other types of risks. And so if you can be on the same page, the communication is really easy. And that also flows up into the, CFO and higher. So I'd say just set the foundation.
Excellent. And how many risk management members are part of your group?
In terms of
employees.
Well, now with the data center thing, it's hundreds of people just focused on, data centers.
Okay. So you have a lot of analysts and people like that.
We have analysts. We're using AI for some of the things now.
Yeah.
But because it's across that spectrum, I have people from the financial institution vertical. I've got people in the construction side, people on the operations side. I've got cyber people, AI people,
right?
Energy people, renewable people, right? And so we all gather together. So it's a little different in sort of a classic, let's say technology, which I used to be part of, or where you've got more of a universal set with a team. This is more multidisciplinary, not ad hoc because they're under one umbrella, but yeah.
Many irons and many fires. That's how I would.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it sounds like it could be anywhere from dozens to maybe even 100 or more.
It's definitely.
Yeah. Okay, great. And do you have a leadership style other than be really, really relaxed and chilled out?
I would say my leadership style is collaborative. I will actually try to lift the whole team up. So not really even like a quarterback, but you're basically orchestrating how it all comes together. And then a lot of people can get wins out of it. So I think that if you talk to people I've worked with over the years, I've lifted all of them up and, let them have the success they deserve.
Right. So I feel like that's karmic for you because people took you under their wing and you seem to be a strong proponent of mentorship. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. And I think that's been the secret to my success. And when people, whether it's clients I've worked with and go through various roles, I dealt with a lot of the same people for my entire career in different, some were colleagues, like Christy was a colleague, but she became a competitor. Then she became, but we stay connected over that whole horizon. And I have really hundreds of people that sort of fit that profile.
We will take one more quick break because I want to tell you a little bit more about my friends at the Spencer Educational Foundation. I want to tell you about the openings and the deadlines for various Spencer Educational Foundation grants. The Risk Manager on Campus application period will open April 1st, 2026, and it will close on June 30th. Grant awardees, colleges and universities are typically notified in September. Now let's talk about course development grants. The application deadline for interval number 2 will be on June 15th, 2026, and award notifications will be sent out in late July. General grants will open on May 1st, and the application deadline is July 30th. And internship grant applications open on August 15th and close on October 15th. Links to each of these grants are on this episode's show notes. And of course, you can visit spencered.org for more information. And now let's conclude our interview with 2025 Goodell Award winner Randy Nornes.
Randy, there's something else in the profile that I wanted to talk about a little bit because it fascinated me, and it's not the core element of your career, but it was fascinating. You, along with Pat Ryan, led the risk management and financial guarantee team for Chicago's 2016 Summer Olympic bid. Now, Do you have to work alongside city and state government in order to be part of that team?
Yeah. So that was, Pat, when Pat retired as CEO of Aon, he took on this project to bring the Olympics. So he was head of the Olympic bid for Chicago.
Wow.
And I think it was at some social event where he said, "Hey, Randy, I've got a project for you." And then it ended up being like almost a full year of work. And for those of you who haven't worked on an Olympic bid, the host
assume they haven't. Yes, please.
the host city has to sign a host city agreement that basically says we'll take on the risks of delivering the games. And so there's a financial guarantee effectively that the city has to take on. A lot of global cities, it's done, at a country level. That's not the way it operates in the U.S. And so we had to figure out how to create really de-risking the games so that what the city's guarantee would look like was limited, because we had built insurance and risk management, and like on the construction side had contractors take on risk. So we had really had this model of de-risking. So it was the first time anyone had done that for an Olympic Games.
And how far before 2016 was this? I'm guessing it was probably
2008.
Oh, I was going to say,
and 8.
I was going to say it had to have been at least 2 or 3 Olympics beforehand, right?
Yeah. And so we obviously we're not successful, ended up going to Rio.
Right.
But the work we did around de-risking the games became the model that a lot of future cities took on to de-risk the game. So Los Angeles, some of the Winter Games, mostly the Western European, U.S. Games, the one that weren't state sponsored, because it's expensive to put on a game, especially a summer games. So
take me through it. What were some of the things that you had to itemize? And safety would have to be one of them, right?
Well, you start. Yeah, there's a line item budget that the bid team puts out. And a big part of it is construction of venues, places that people are going to live. One of the biggest ones is actually IT technology, because you've got to have massive bandwidth to broadcast. And so that's a big one. You've got tens of thousands of volunteers that you've got to transport, train, secure. I mean, so there's a lot of things that go into that line item. So we took the line item budget and said, how can we take each line item and create certainty around it?
Right.
And then so we did each one of those separately to create as much certainty. So back to this distance between certain and uncertain, tried to shrink the distance.
Yeah.
So that then when we put the umbrella guarantee on top of it, it was actually touching a lot fewer things that had a lot more certainty. So there's a handful of things. Probably the biggest one is the games have to be delivered on a certain date, right? You can't say, we didn't get this stuff done, so we're going to delay for 3 months. Right. So
no, you better be on. Yeah.
Right. So if there's a construction problem, the exception was actually Tokyo because we had COVID, but until then you hadn't had a disruption, and you're front end loading all the expense. So for whatever reason, the games don't happen. There's a terrorist attack, there's a global outbreak of war, there's a pandemic. You're stuck with all those front end costs.
You're holding the bag,
which is your worst case scenario. And so the closer you get to the event, the more risk you have. And then you've got the 3 or 4 weeks where you're delivering the games and the Paralympic Games.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting thing. And we did a white paper on it. I don't know, I'll have to see where that sits, but just on how to de-risk games. And it was really done to encourage cities to not be afraid to host the games.
Wow. And so, like you said, that set call it a template or a standard for other U.S. cities. Have other risk professionals from city governments or county governments, have they reached out to you to pick your brain about this sort of thing?
Yeah, we've done over the years, when cities are bidding for both winter and summer in North America, so Canada included, they reach out, we kind of share what we have to give them the template, and
wow,
and then they go for it. Yeah, so San Francisco did it, LA, Boston, Calgary, yeah.
And when you're on that committee, what's it like when you're working with, I'm state senators and representatives and people who are that high level in government?
Yeah, well, most of the people we had to deal with were at the city level. So it was the
Okay.
mayors, or Mayor Daley, his staff, 50 aldermen, um, and so you had to sort of bring them all along. Um, and we tried to, give them lots of transparency into what we were doing. The funny story that that I think is, with technology meeting where people are, um, we provided like 1,200 pages of material for each of the aldermen in
Wow.
3-ring binders,
Right.
so they could, go through in as much detail as they wanted. And as a courtesy, we put all of the text, scanned it onto discs, so you could put it in and you could do word searchable, but you could review it electronically.
Because the year is 2008.
2008, right?
Okay.
And so
Just
we hand
queuing
this
the
back,
audience back in there. Yeah.
So we hand these things out to all the 50 aldermen get them. So I get an angry call, like a day or two after we had handed those out, from one of the aldermen who's upset because they're trying to listen to the disc in their car. and and it was, searchable word. It was not, books on tape.
Right.
And so I had to sort of take them through. So that was, not everyone gets as fast along the technology trajectory as everybody else. So
Wait, do you look back on that experience and say, I wish we had gotten the Olympics? Or do you look at what it took and say, you know what, maybe that wasn't right for us?
no, I think any city should be thankful for an Olympics. I mean, what it gets you is it makes the city, sparkle.
Yeah.
You get an influx of a lot of outside money. So the Chicago would have gotten a lot of federal money. So the transportation system would have become, quickly upgraded. It would have made the city a better city.
Think so?
You know,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Well, go to London. If you look at London and you look at where the Olympics took place in London,
Mhm.
where the main facility was for the London Games, that was a huge pile of discarded appliances. It was
Oh, really?
it was a dump, and so it's now a beautiful multi-purpose. I think maybe West Ham plays there, so there's a mall there. It's super nice. Paris, that sparkled for the
Yeah.
Olympics. So I'd say, if you're thinking of bidding, um, it's worth it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wish we would have been successful here.
All right. Well, there's always a chance it might come back around one day. I suppose.
Yeah,
I couldn't say. I couldn't say. I don't have. Did you watch the Milan Winter Olympics?
I did.
Yeah. A closing ceremony was beautiful.
Yeah, opening and closing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the Alps are spectacular, so that's an easy one. I think the next Winter Games is on the other side of the Alps, on the French side. So
Yeah. Would you rather do the Winter Olympics, or are you happy to? I wouldn't want to do the Winter Olympics, all the skiing injuries and stuff.
No, it's hard to watch too because everything's so spread out. But
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Chicago's got a great, I don't know if you want to call it a very colorful history when it comes to uh, notorious characters throughout American history, especially. And a lot of us are familiar with the movie The Untouchables and Capone. And then if you want to go a little bit further, even Casino, what a lot of folks may overlook is that the bosses from Casino were really from Chicago, and that Lefty Rosenthal was from Chicago, and so was Tony Spilatro. Okay, so I had a little experience with this as an editorial assistant well before I joined RIMS. Anywho, so we have Chicago in common in that respect. And you were one of the leaders of Project 6, right?
yes.
Tell us about Project 6 and what it was.
So
Or
Project
what it
6
is.
actually came out of the Olympic bid.
Okay.
So one of the things that I should be, interacting with people from city government, some of the aldermen, while we were putting the bid together, a handful of aldermen, made some real estate purchases, did some things that were going to be sites. So they were going to make a buck off it.
Right.
And so I started to see, that was my first sort of up close of like, corruption in a big city.
Yeah.
And there were other examples as well. And so a number of us put together this group called Project 6. It was really a nod to the 6 business leaders that partnered with Elliot Ness to go after Al Capone back in the day and sort of stood firm. And so we thought that would be a good nod to history. And so we set up this nonprofit whistleblower organization so people could come to us and say, hey, we think there's corruption here, or, and so we started that organization and literally got hundreds of whistleblower tips. We published things where we had criminal activity. We would bring in sort of the federal prosecutors and turn everything over to them. And some things were not criminal, but they were unethical.
Sure.
So yeah. So one of the things about Chicago, there's very little that's illegal, and ethics are not illegal for the most part. So unless you fail to pay taxes and steal your campaign funds, the feds can get you for tax evasion, which is ultimately what they got Al Capone for. That one still works every time. But I think the one that got a lot of press was the Cubs were in the World Series. And a lot of the public officials were happy to take sort of face value tickets for the World Series games. And so we thought, well, the going price is thousands of dollars. It's not face value. So that seems like, potential for bribe and influence. So we actually went to the ethics committee of the city and said, hey, this shouldn't happen. They should have to pay market price. And they were so freaked out that nobody had ever come to the ethics committee with anything before. They did a pause and they said, well, come back in a week. And so we came back in a week. We had press with us and they changed the rule. So no more face value tickets for any sporting events, any sold out events. It's all market price. So we did not make a lot of friends in public office, especially since they did ultimately go on to win the World Series that year. But
right.
Yeah. So it's not all big things, but that was the memorable one.
And Project 6 is just inactive now, right? It's closed.
We closed it. It's it's not even a long story. When you anger a bunch of people in public office, they went after us because we weren't getting whistleblower tips on Republicans, which was sort of an absurd thing because there are no Republican office holders in the city of Chicago or Cook County. I think there might have been one commissioner. So, unless that one guy was doing something. So that was one thing. And then some of the senior people that we ruffled, they went after donors. So we thought it was just a better idea to shut it down. So,
okay.
But we were 3.5 years. We were alive.
It was a gratifying experience for you?
It was. It was. Yeah.
Is it tough to be a man of integrity amid all that corruption and gray areas of ethics?
I would say the biggest frustration is how slow things move. And I don't think that's a Chicago thing. I think you've seen quite a few people now, go to prison and some of the things that we saw, but it took 5, 6, 7 years to work through the system.
Right.
So I think that's the frustrating thing is you would like justice to happen faster. And you hope that when those people do go to prison, the high profile people, that there is a pause. And I think there's a little bit of that. And you're seeing that. I think there's a generational thing that's happening where, maybe some of those, you don't want to be like those people, you don't want to go to prison. Kind of sucks, especially when you're late in your career. So just avoid that at all costs.
That's good advice there from Randy Nornes.
Yeah.
And before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, since you're the Goodell Award winner, which is a lifetime achievement award, your life isn't over yet, though, Randy. You have plenty more to do. I'm sure you get this question from plenty of folks, but you've got the global risk community listening in, and I was wondering if a young professional or a rising risk professional asked you what separates a good risk manager or problem solver from a great one beyond technical knowledge. What would you specifically emphasize?
So I would say don't get too focused on like what you did yesterday. Right. And so that's really easy to say, I built this perfect thing last year. And so I'm going to carry that thing forward every year. And it becomes more of a mechanical exercise. I think you really do every year or every day, step back and say, am I still doing the right stuff? Am I focused on the right thing? And a simple one I'd like to point out is, let's say you have a fixed amount of money to spend to solve all your risk problems. And so you're insuring your buildings for fire, but over time you've engineered them so they're really fire resistant. They're not as risky. But at the same time, you have this AI world and cyber risk and all these new things that have come in. And if you have a fixed amount of money, is it better to direct it to solve like cyber risk and pulling some money away or taking on more risk for property? And I think these are the things that you can only do if you don't get too hung up on what did I do yesterday? What's the market price, and get sort of into that transactional mode. We have to do transactional things, but being able to step back and really stay on top of what's happening with the business. And I think now that's never been more important, where businesses are transforming right before our eyes, and AI is sort of leading the transformation. So, I would go deep on that. I would just, make sure you're interacting with your business to stay current on what the business is really all about.
Yeah. Would you also, one of the trends I've noticed is among many of our award winners, not just the Goodell ones, but certainly the Goodell ones are in there, is that many of the award winners that I've seen through the years are folks who have been at just a few companies throughout the course of their career. They've got longevity there. Do you think that that's also a big bonus in today's economy and today's climate?
I think it is for maybe a different reason than I would have originally thought. But I think, being here a long time gives me the latitude to do all the things I've done. Right. So I'm not, just, placing property insurance or, super professional. There's, huge value in that. But for me, I think it's been a gift that I can look for these new things. I can cut across these various towers that exist and really think about sort of risk at the biggest level. And I think for people, if you move company to company, what are you going to do? You're going to step into the new role. You're going to say, okay, what do we got here? You're going to make some changes, fix things.
And then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah, on to the next thing. A different skill set, highly valuable, but you aren't going to have the latitude to sort of experiment with new things or to think, okay, what comes next? You're kind of there because you're needed at that moment in time. And it can be very, comfortable staying with that as long as you follow what I said before, which is don't get too comfortable and make sure you're staying current. So.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you joining us here on the show, and want to wish you congratulations again on the Goodell Award. It's a big honor here at RIMS, and you certainly deserve it. And I look forward to meeting you in Philadelphia, May 3rd through the 6th at RISKWORLD. And thank you so much for joining us here on RIMScast, Randy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin. And we'll see you in Philly.
Special thanks again to 2025 Goodell Award winner Randy Nornes for joining us here on RIMScast. A link to his profile in RIMS Risk Management Magazine's Awards Edition 2025 is available through this episode's show notes. And he's one of our men in Chicago, so check out ChicagoRIMS.org. They have a live event coming up called Nuclear Verdicts Live Mock Trial for Evaluating Litigation Risk and Strategy. That's at the Aon Center, Chicago on March 11th. So you might see Randy there. Then we've got the Chicago RIMS annual golf outing September 21st and the 11th annual Chicagoland Risk Forum on September 24th at the Old Post Office in Chicago. They're one of our most active and vibrant chapters, so check out those events and visit ChicagoRIMS.org. And now I want to speak about a topic near and dear to my heart, sponsorships. You can sponsor a RIMScast episode either on our publicly facing weekly show, that's this show, or with a dedicated episode. RIMScast has produced special episodes for JB Boda, The Hartford, Alliant, Zurich, Highwire, AXA XL, Prudent Insurance Brokers, High Trust, and Aon. Links to sponsored episodes are on our show notes. RIMScast has a global audience comprised of risk and insurance professionals, legal professionals, students, business leaders, C-suite executives, and more. Let's collaborate and help you reach them. Contact pd@rims.org for more information. Let's talk about RIMS membership, folks. Become a RIMS member and get access to the tools, thought leadership, and network you need to succeed. Visit rims.org/membership or email membershipdept@rims.org for more information. And let's also talk about risk knowledge. This is the RIMS searchable content library that provides relevant information for today's risk professionals. Available materials include RIMS executive reports, survey findings, contributed articles, industry research, benchmarking data, and more. For the best reporting on the profession of risk management, check out Risk Management Magazine, the Society's official monthly publication. You can find us on rmmagazine.com. It is written and published by the best minds in risk management. My name is Justin Smulison, Business Content Manager here at RIMS. Please remember to subscribe to RIMScast on your favorite podcasting app. Email us at content@rims.org. Practice good risk management, stay safe, and thank you again for your continuous support.